The new blue hammer has already taken the bowling world by storm, so James is here to grip it and rip it as we check out the new, not urethane, global sensation. If the new is the kind of blue balls you actually want, there's a link in the description to pick them up at Bowler's Mart, and I do have to give credit to Keith from House Hack Bowling for the punny title to the video. This one will be a little different from a couple angles. First, apologies to the hammerheads for the storm jersey, we're still working with what we have. Next, we typically test on Kegel Chromium, but for this video we're on Kegel Alcatraz, which is a shorter, flatter pattern, which is where you'd expect to see urethane in action. It's 38 feet long, just a shade under 25 mils at 24.845, and the ratio is sport compliant at 2.19 to 1. It's on the shorter side, medium volume, very flat, and very difficult. To illustrate, here are a few test shots with the NV Tour, which is currently considered one of the best tough condition balls out there. He did hit it with a 2000 pad first. I know it looks a little shiny, and I'm sure that that's one of the first comments I'll hear, but darker color balls look shinier on camera than they actually are for whatever reason. Plus, really any duller, and instead of having just left to right over-under, he'd also introduce front to back over-under because the ball would start picking up too early. This pattern is very similar to the doubles and singles pattern from the Open Championships in 2023, virtually identical matter of fact, and with it being flat, short, and somewhat dry, it made trying to use reactive balls for the vast majority of people a nightmare, and urethane or urethane-like reactions were almost a necessity because even controllable reactive balls were still too responsive and strong. The new blue just came out a couple months ago and wasn't an option, of course, but I can pretty well guarantee James will be packing at least a couple of them for this year's trip. The new blue was a surprising answer to the PBA's new urethane rules that raised the hardness to 78D because it's a Purple Hammer-esque reaction that's not urethane or is reactive enough to qualify as a reactive ball. While the Purple Hammer is a complete anomaly in that it reacts like urethane but is also surprisingly effective from angle, the new blue is even more so because other balls before that weren't urethane, that attempted to be urethane-like, or even part-reactive urethane blends were largely unsuccessful as they typically fell into a dead zone where they weren't close enough to urethane to be usable when you needed urethane, but weren't reactive enough when you needed reactive. The core numbers are a 2.586 RG and an 0.27 differential in 15 pounds, slightly stronger than typical numbers for urethane. Remember, the purple is 265 and 0.15, and these numbers put it right on the edge where you're beefing up the core a bit, giving yourself some extra layout versatility, but still keeping the core tame enough to avoid throwing that more traditional urethane look out of balance. What they ended up with is what I would consider a true technological advancement for ball tech that we just don't see much anymore. With the ever-tightening range of specifications for ball tech and the places it's already gotten to, we're more in the nipping and tucking or fine-tuning era rather than the discovery and advancement era. The new blue nails the design intent and perfectly hits that gap that I don't think has been hit before. It's a smooth, controllable reaction that does act like urethane with a little more reactive shape that, as you can see, is handling this extremely difficult pattern with relative ease. It's smooth and controllable from right down the side, but strong enough to play some angle with, and it doesn't just cover the boards, it does so in good enough shape to finish and hit down lane. In addition, people typically will also use urethane on drier house conditions just for the lack of reaction or the control, but the results usually aren't great. They're just not as bad as with reactive balls that are too strong and responsive. The new blue is also right at home on drier house conditions or higher friction lanes because the differential is high enough that it actually flares enough to avoid creating much, if any, carry down. Now, this is James' ball that he purchased, and I'm not affiliated anymore and intend to stay that way, so this isn't me jumping on the hype train or gushing about something to encourage any favors, and you're seeing the ball reaction yourself, plus it's been out long enough now to have seen it out in the wild. It's just a great lightning in a bottle, unicorn kind of reaction, and like always, I'm just calling it like I see it. People, for some reason, will tell ball reviewers thanks for your honesty when they bash something, even if they're honestly wrong, just because trashing something, whether it's an accurate review or not, apparently means they're unbiased, and I guess that's more important than just evaluating the ball reaction. Well, you can be honest and unbiased when you give something rave reviews too. This ball earns them. I don't know how I'm supposed to nitpick this one without criticizing it for not being or doing something it's not supposed to in the first place. Moving on, obviously we have to compare it to the Purple Hammer. Again, pretty high RG, low differential core, not really going to rev or roll much, if at all, not going to flare much, if at all, and that creates the early and slow climbing urethane reaction. There's virtually zero core strength, and that allows the ball to just spin. It keeps the ball reaction nice and stable and controllable, while it lets the cover do the work. Urethane covers are strong and early, but after a couple rotations, the ball picks up oil, and that slows down the reaction of this ball because since it doesn't flare, it continues to roll over the same oil tracks, and of course with oil already on the ball where it's touching the lane, that keeps it from continuing to dig hard on every rotation. Then when the ball hits the back end, it puts most of that oil back down onto the lane, which even further enhances the traditional urethane reaction. Creating carry down helps make the ball path to the pocket even straighter and more controllable. After a few shots to get some oil on the ball, you see the prototypical Purple Hammer reaction that has wreaked all kinds of havoc on the bowling industry. It does all the right things in all the right places. It's just a little longer and a little sharper than more traditional urethane, like a pitch black for example, plus it covers boards easier as well. With James' speed, he runs out of room inside faster with the purple than most people do, and faster than he did with the new blue. Additional notes from further testing off camera and use in tournaments is that the purple is still better at ultimate control when you want that typical urethane plus type reaction, and it holds surface a little longer. Reactive balls obviously do shine up faster than urethane does, and that's really the only knock on the new blue. But realistically, the ball reaction's so good, plus the new blue flares a little to help with the traction, so it's more of a knock on paper, or at least there's a trade-off. The purple is better when you need that uber controllable look, but when it's close but a little too slow or lazy down lane, the new blue steps up to be more than just a ball that meets the rules and requirements for the pros. It's something that is a great ball in general that I'd highly recommend for several different situations and conditions. As we're finishing up here, James got back onto the lane with the new blue after creating some carry down with the purple to see how it would handle that, and this is a good illustration of another point. People always ask what a good ball to cut through carry down would be, and the answer is that there's no such thing. It takes a shockingly small amount of oil to make a ball skid or slide, so the best thing to do is to just stay on top of it and treat it as hold or a shim. While James stays to the right, the new blue, while smoother than it was on the fresh pattern, still looks fine. As he moves in and tries to go through it, you can see it just doesn't recover. People will often complain about carry down like it's a bad thing, but if you understand it and handle it the correct way, it can actually be a benefit. James will also be getting his hands on the new 78 hardness Black Pearl Hammer when they become available, so I will have a review up for that one eventually. Plus, he's been drilling a lot of B7 balls most of the year, so he does have heavy hitters like the NV Tour obviously, in addition to some more recent releases like the Ethos, so reviews for those are also on the way. Once again, down in the description is a link to Bowler's Mart that will get any of the balls featured in this video ordered for you. I am required by the YouTube overlords to note that I do receive a 5% commission on all sales through the links. And of course, don't forget my code ROSEDAL10 to get 10% off your order at checkout at CoolWick. Thanks for watching, and may the strikes be with you.